Welcome to the Year of Being 70 podcast.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Dear Lucy,
Oh,
today you have 70.
yes, thank you.
I've been 70 for a
Yes,
whole month.
yes, you have. We're both in the year of being 70, but you've had a month to get used to it, and I'm just kind of coming to terms with it today. So it's odd, isn't it? How did you feel on your 70th birthday?
Well, before I turned 70, for like weeks, I was agonizing. I thought I would suddenly be old. The ceiling would like come down a huge notch, and I would feel, like time is running out. But actually, on the morning of my birthday, exactly a month ago, I woke up and I thought, I feel full of vitality and all was well. So, how is it for you today?
Well, yes, I woke up feeling quite good. I'm one of these people. Oh, Lisette, you know what we haven't done? We haven't introduced ourselves. We should say who
Oh,
we are,
let's do.
shouldn't we, first?
Oh,
So,
let's introduce one another.
okay. So I am with Lisette Schoutemaker. I think I pronounced that right. Lisette
Well
is
done.
in Amsterdam, Holland, and Lisette is a businesswoman, an investor, an author. How many books have you written, Lisette? It must be six or five. Five.
Five.
Five fantastic books. And Lisette and I have known each other since we were 8, and our mothers before that knew each other for even longer. So we're here to talk about our being in our 70th year. So who do
Yes.
you
So,
think I am?
who do I think you are? Well, when we met during a holiday, I think our mothers had this idea to bring the families together for a holiday in Albury. And I think something between us immediately clicked. And we're both these. So I wrote a book about eldest daughters. We're both these kind of serious, capable, very responsible eldest daughters. You're certainly one of them too. And you, in my eyes, were then, this glamorous London person. And I think you're adventurous. You've lived in Australia. You are a mother. You are also, I mean, you do so many things. You are an entrepreneur. You're certainly also a writer. I write nonfiction, but you also write fiction, which I have great admiration for, especially since taking your year-long course on how to write fiction, which is so much more work than writing nonfiction. And you always have new ideas, and you not only have ideas, you act on them too. And that's how we're making this podcast.
Yes, it suddenly came to me kind of at the end of last week, just before my 70th birthday. I don't know, I woke up and it just popped into my head, fully formed, the Year of Being 70 podcast, Lucy and Lisette. So I messaged you and said, look, I've got this really stupid idea. And luckily, well, I don't know luckily, but you thought it wasn't such a stupid idea. So here we are. And we are thinking that we will talk about what it feels like to be in the first year of our 70s on a weekly basis, but also to look back on our lives and have a look at the things that we were born into, the world that we were born into. And in 1954, we were both born. You on September the 22nd, me on October the 22nd, along with some other really interesting women as well. So people like Cherie Blair, Condoleezza Rice, Angela Merkel,
Oh, good
Annie
going.
Lennox, Chris Evert. So some really kind of very powerful and successful women were born in the same year as us, and so I just think it's an interesting time to be at in our lives. 70 is quite a big number, but
It is a
also
very big number. We've lived 70 years. It's very, very strange because it is so long. And I don't know about you, but I've looked at people of 70 and I thought they were old, but in a way it is because we can look back on so many changes in society and in the lives of women and our own lives. And on the other hand, I still feel youthful.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel, how did this happen? How am I 70? This is really odd. Have I done my maths wrong? Was I actually born in 1964? I'm really only 60 because
Yeah.
I don't feel young in the sense of and I don't wish to be young again. I don't know if you feel the same. I don't have any hankering to go back to my 20s or 30s. I feel that was difficult and that was bad enough at the time. I don't want to do it again. I
We'll
mean, it was
talk about
lovely,
that
but
later.
yeah, but equally, I do feel that being 70 is quite a big change. I kind of feel that you can no longer in our 60s, I felt, we can say we're kind of late middle-aged. But when you get to 70, you cannot be anything but old, really, can you? I mean, there's no other description of this
I
from
think
this
I think
period on.
experienced, full of
Yes, yes.
experience. We're full of life experience. I feel it is more quiet on the inside. I know who I am. I also, you know who I am not. I don't make so many
Yep.
mistakes, hoping to be something or someone that actually I'm not. I come to kind of grips and acceptance of all of that. So it's more quiet on the inside. And when I say youthful, I think yeah, I'm still curious.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hope I don't know how long that will last. I mean, you see people kind of let go of things, no, I'm not going to learn ChatGPT, but that's something for the younger generation. And that's one of the things actually, Lucy, I admire about you because you've thrown yourself into that world of AI. And so I think that's also a commonality between us. You're also curious.
yes, yes. I don't feel like, I mean, I suppose what worries me is that I might suddenly, or not suddenly, but slowly slide into being less curious now we've passed this age. But I don't feel like that at the moment at all. I feel like I've still got, in fact, what worries me is that I feel that I've got so much to do and I don't know how long I'll have to do it in. That I mean, for example, I've got three novels I really want to write that I've been putting off for years because I've got to work. There are sort of things I have to do, and I feel that, writing novels is not not necessarily going to earn me any money, although who knows? But I really want. I don't want to put those off anymore. I want to get those written. And there are some other things that I want to do. I have a this year I started a book writing app called Book Magic AI. And I that is for nonfiction, particularly business books. It's a sort of writing coaching app. And I really want to do one of those for fiction. So that's going to take a bit of, kind of effort to get off the ground, a bit of thought and finding investors and things like that. But that there are just things I want to do before I'm not able to do them. And I suppose the kind of the number 70 just
Yeah.
makes you feel a bit more, things could come to an end at any time in a sense. Hopefully not,
Well, but I think that is also true. I think you and I have both, friends who are either slightly older or the same age or slightly younger, and you see something happens to them that, it's just bad luck. They had it in their body always, and now it gives out
yeah.
or whatever, or they haven't been as healthy as they ought to be, or but anyway, it could give out at any time, and it's more of a reality. I mean, we could always think that,
Yeah.
but now it's really more of a reality when you still, yeah. But I love that you are still so ambitious, that there's so much still wanting, to come through you.
Well, I'm sure you have too. I'm sure you have more books to write, and you're kind of you're very busy in a more I'd probably say more sensible way than I am. I mean, you are a businesswoman and an investor, and I find that really admirable. And I kind of I wish I was more like you in some ways.
Well, let's talk about investing one of these podcasts.
Yes,
But
yes,
investing is basically, talking to a lot of people and then thinking, oh, I really trust you. I love what you do. I think you're actually going to, pull it off. And then basically the other people are doing it. That's the joy of investing. You enable other people to bring something into the world. And so it's much less work for the investor than it is. And unless it doesn't really go well, then it's a lot of work and not a
yes.
lot
Well,
of
I guess
pleasure.
if your investment doesn't pay off, then that's
Yeah, and it isn't only if it doesn't pay off. I mean, but if a small company is in trouble, then it's people and it is
So
other
as an investor,
investors.
if you're investing in a small company and things start going wrong, do you actually go in? Because you're very experienced, you've run your own
Yeah.
consulting
No, no, no.
business.
As an investor, no, I don't go in. I'm on the board of a cooperative with which we invest in regenerative agriculture. And the team goes in, but they're in their, 30s, 40s, and they're really with the times. I feel for me to go in, no, I wouldn't do that. And I am experienced, but I had my own company, but it's a long time ago. And I always feel I'm such a, I have a lot of knowledge about many things, but nothing really in depth. So I don't really go in, but you do speak with, other investors and the founders or managers and say, what can we do to salvage? Where can you economize? How can you focus instead of, developing your product further? Maybe you can market it already. And there's like these general rules that are not too complicated, actually.
You sound like a lovely kind of investor. I mean, I'm on the other end of the other side of the fence, I suppose, in as much as I'm a founder. So I have a business called Rethink Press, which publishes business books, and that's been going for 13 years. And we've never actually had any investment. We've always, we started it just as a two-person business, and it's just exponentially grown. I mean, it has had its ups and downs. We've bought another company, another publishing company, and that was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, I must say, and demanding to integrate one company into another. But that
Yeah.
was good. And but then having started Book Magic, that needed in that took investment because it's a tech company, and you've got
Yeah.
to build things up front. So yes, that's a really interesting perspective though to hear from an investor like you. And obviously, if I manage to do the fiction book writing app, then that will need investment too. So I'll have to get your advice about that as well.
Yeah, I love that investors in an early stage are called business angels. And I feel,
Yes.
that's a role play to really be an angel and have your wings around that company so they have some time to grow.
Oh,
And I think
yes.
it's the best. You can build a company without investors. You can just make your own decisions. You report to the fiscal authorities and the Chamber of Commerce, but not to any others who, might you never know. Investors are also well, they're good, but they sometimes, have their own priorities, which can be very understandable. Yeah.
Interesting. So
So, I mean, my conclusion is how big, how we're still so much in life and
yeah,
in working life.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how, I don't know, not that many years ago, perhaps by the time you were 65 at the latest, you'd be expected to give up work and, sort of, I don't know, relax, play golf, do, take cruises, and then none of that seems either remotely desirable or even possible for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be possible for me, but I have no interest in
No,
those things.
no,
But
no.
when I look back, like my grandmother, even before she was 65, she had kind of retired into an old people's home. They came
Yeah,
in to live close to us. like on the outskirts of Utrecht. And it was really an old people's home. Like they don't even exist these days anymore. But she wasn't even 65. She moved from Amsterdam to there. And then my mother never really worked. She always said at the end of her life, she died 3 years ago, at the end of her life, she said that the time of taking care of us when we were little was the best time of her life.
Wow.
And she looked back on that, with great satisfaction. And I always thought, wow, that's a long time ago. And yeah, but she felt really needed. And I guess working brings you that, the
Yeah.
sense that you are needed. And at the same time, once you go, then other people are there and things continue. You're never irreplaceable. But it is nice to be needed and to, yeah, contribute. That's my main
Yes.
hobby.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, we've got lots of similarities, I think, as people, but we've also got lots of differences. So, for a start, you're Dutch and you live in Amsterdam. I'm English and I live in Norfolk, UK, in a village. I have been married twice, and I have two birth children, two sons in their 40s and some grandchildren, and two adopted daughters in their 20s. You have chosen not to marry and you have chosen not to have children. And yes, I mean, those are maybe those are the main differences between us. I don't know. But I
But so
think,
interesting, like when you lived in a city, a big city in London, and moved more to the countryside. I came from, suburbia and moved to the city. Um, I chose not to have children, but I think, that life was already in me. I never had any real interest in children. I didn't understand why everybody had wanted their own children. So I
I
so
sometimes feel
commend
the
you for
same.
adopting. So commend you for adopting. But the life of, family life never really appealed to me.
Do you think, I mean, you had as far as I'm aware, you had a very happy childhood, didn't you? It wasn't like you were rejecting the family life you'd experienced, or
Well,
looking
I
from
had
the
a happy
outside.
childhood, but also I was raised in a very kind of coded, life was more coded when we were young. And so basically just to characterize it, in winter everybody played field hockey and in summer they played tennis. And I have no interest in sport. I have no ambition. I'm not competitive there. And yeah, when you look at it now, I would say I was born more left wing in a family that was right wing. And so there were many things that I felt differently about and that I could not talk about in my family, and that were even, laughed at and ridiculed. So I felt out of place. I couldn't really find my place. And, as I have these vivid memories of us sitting at a dining room table, and my father would come in. He would come in from somewhere. I had no idea what people in offices did, but I could see my mother's life, and I felt, stuck with us, and we were fighting. And then my father came in from somewhere at a time of, unpredictable, and he'd had a life somewhere else, which always, yeah, it looked more interesting to me.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Yes. I mean, I think we're very much the same, and I have no no interest in sport whatsoever. And I grew up in a family that I suppose was right wing and, conservative, let's say, with a small
Yeah.
c, rather than necessarily kind of politically right wing specifically. But I always felt out of place too, and I had a very strong sense from an early age, and I do not know why, of disliking entitlement and feeling that there were people out there who didn't have what we had. I mean, I came from what in England would be considered a posh family. I mean, sort of upper middle
Hmm.
class. It didn't feel kind of rich to me because there were always richer people than us around. But we had a big house in London and a seaside house as well. So I mean, it was. But and there were lots of. I once said to my father that Aldborough, where we had our seaside, our country house, I always felt it was like an upper class Butlins because I kind of didn't like it. But I don't know if Butlins means anything to you, but it's
No, that means nothing to me.
no,
What is
no,
that?
it's sort of it's kind of a holiday camp kind of place
Oh, okay.
for that British people have loved over the years, not so necessarily so much now. And he was very offended by that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but I also kind of went very much more left wing and sort of moved out of the social kind of place that I was born into. And yeah,
Did.
so, and I don't know why. I cannot put my finger on why that would have happened particularly. I mean, there are certain incidents in that I went to private school. I went to boarding school for 3 years when I was about 12 to 15 or 16. And then I came back to London to do our A levels, they are here. And I accidentally went to a grammar school, a state school, which was just a very good school, and my parents were recommended it, but they asked what the fees were, and they were told, oh, there are no fees. And so they were delighted, but it was a completely different experience for me than I'd ever experienced before. And then I went to university. I failed to get into Oxford, where I was always destined to go in my
Hmm.
my family's sort of story, and didn't get in. And I went to university in Liverpool, where I met people I had never come across before, people from the north of England as much as anything. And I married a man from Blackpool, and then we went to live in Australia. So I kind of got for various sort of stages in my life, I moved out of the social class and area that I'd been born into. And when I came back from Australia, when I was about to be 30, I had completely kind of changed. Well, changed. I didn't feel I could go back into where I'd come from,
But
if you
maybe
know
you
what I
had
mean.
not changed, but you had selved.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good word. That's a great word. Tell me what you mean by, I mean, I think I know what you mean, but that's,
Well, I think there is a life within us that wants to be lived. And if we don't live that life, it gets very difficult. And my trajectory is very different from yours because I did try to adapt and I did try to be like the others. And I paid a high price for that because I became depressed. And of course I repressed myself. And it's taken me many years to find a way back to who I truly am, which is much more yeah, my brother calls it woke, but with that term, and I call it full of empathy
yes,
other people.
indeed.
But but my mother, I don't know if she's right, she used to say this. She said, you were born at a time just on when the hippies were, slightly older than us.
Yeah.
But I still remember like 68 and Woodstock and, the time of the uprising against the authority. And she said you were just a tail end of that. And that's why you have these different viewpoints, which I thought was an interesting observation. But to me, they feel very much, yes, I feel like a hippie inside.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was. And there
Absolutely.
was kind of an alternative group in my high school that I went with. And then I went to Leiden University and I became part of the student association that is the posh people. And I really tried to show to my parents that I could be that too, because my brother and sister were kind of, among the popular people at school. And I was like the shy child with wearing glasses from age 10 and a bit awkward and not in the sports team and all those things. And so I thought, well, I have to. You know, another thing my mother would say to me is, you were always a bit off, Lisette. You were always a bit off. And it's such a hurtful comment.
Mm.
And I said that to her when she was, I don't know, 91. And she had never realized. She always thought it was funny. She'd never realized. But I was kind of off in my family. And fortunately, now I'm on with the people I have found. But yeah, I went to Leiden and I thought, okay, my parents, my mother was like delighted she'll find the right husband and he will be a businessman, like, she had married a businessman, and I would just repeat the life. And then I chose not to, and I broke my engagement and I made decisions that never, were in the direction of settling down or having a family. And yeah, there's
That's so
lots to unpack
interesting.
there still.
Yes, yes, it never stops, does it? You kind of go on having sort of almost revelations about things about yourself. I mean, it doesn't stop just because you get older. But no, that is so interesting. I mean, I discovered when my father died, and I was how old was I? I think I was 40, 40 when my father died. He was 20 years older than my mother. And he was kind of like an Edwardian, he was born in
Mhm.
1908. So that kind of
Ah, yeah.
so my family life was quite old-fashioned in that sort of way. I sort of grew up with a nanny and a live-in nanny, and we had a live-in cook sort of in my early sort of inherited from my grandparents, because my parents inherited their London
But
house.
I remember that house and coming to lunch and have these huge green peas, always slightly overcooked. But there was a cook in the kitchen. I was like, wow, these people must be so wealthy and so rich. And so, I mean, I didn't think it like that, but I was
No.
in awe of all of that.
Yes, it was very formal. My father had,
Yeah.
they had dinner at 8 every night. They came down to the dining room. They had dinner. My father would never have a drink before 6:30. He was always very scared of becoming addicted to things. So he'd
Oh,
never have a
okay.
television in the sitting room in case he got addicted to it. He wouldn't have a drink, an alcoholic drink before 6:30 in case started to drink too much. But yes, so it was very formal, and I suppose I've kind of reacted completely against that. And um, my house, my households have always been considerably more chaotic than that. But I was going, yes, it is strange how things change and you react against them. And I suppose I sort of went with the flow in some ways, and didn't question why things were done in certain ways. And I got married young because actually I'd moved in with my boyfriend, then fiance, then husband. And actually, there was really no need for us to have got married, but my parents were kind of slightly horrified that,
Yeah.
I'd moved in, we'd
Yeah.
moved in together as students. And
I
so it's,
moved in and then I got engaged just to appease my parents, which engagement, wow.
yeah, yes.
So we'll talk about all of those kinds of things.
We
And
will, we will.
lovely how at
Yes,
70 we will get to know one another better and take others along on our ride.
yes, yes, absolutely. So should we just go back to how we met and our mothers before we stop talking today? Because they're the reason that we're here. And our mothers met at Geneva University I'm just trying to think, they must have been in around the late 40s,
I think it
and
must have been like,
early 50s.
yeah. So my mother came back. My mother was part of the colonial regime of the Dutch in Indonesia that was overturned, in a very short, been there for hundreds of years. And then the Japanese came, invaded, and put the Dutch in camps, which were very different from, the concentration camps of the Germans. This was basically their home was turned into a camp, and then the street was turned into a camp, and then um, but yeah, they were sick and hungry and under threat and had no idea how long it would last, and felt afraid. And anyway, they came back to the Netherlands with nothing and no education, because my mother had missed all of secondary school. So I think they came back in 46, and then she did her high school in 3 years. So it must have been like 49 or 50 when her parents thought, this girl needs some time away and needs to have a good time in a healthy atmosphere. And so 49, 50. Yeah, it should be something like that.
Yeah, yes. Well, my mother had a very sort of stunted education, or she always felt that she had my grandparents lived in the country, and they had governesses at home. My mother had three sisters and a brother, and they had terrible governesses who taught them nothing, and she was just, they read the same books over and over again, and she was just desperate for knowledge and information. And she went, I think, during the war to Cheltenham Ladies College, which is a sort of posh boarding school but a kind of very traditional, strict kind of one in England. And so she got more of an education there, and she wanted to go, I think, to Oxford or Cambridge or wherever, and didn't get it. Oh no, she had a terrible horse riding accident. That's what happened. She would have gone to university here, but she had a very bad horse riding accident which nearly killed her, and she took a year or so to recuperate from that. And then when she was well enough, she thought that, I mean, my grandmother had no interest in education for women or for anybody particularly, I don't think.
Yeah.
And she wasn't any help. But my mother's own grandmother on her father's side was very inspirational and said, look, you need to go to university. Why don't you look abroad? And she sort of helped her to get into Geneva. So I think both our mothers took rooms in the house of a widow who had a very kind of rich husband who died, but so she had a big house but no money, and they met there, and they spent sort of 2 years together at Geneva University, which was a very different place to where I mean, I think it was it was very post-war.
Yeah.
And I remember Mum
But
saying
they
that,
were, of course, neutral. So that country
yeah,
it was completely different. I
yes,
think we ought to talk about this next week. I'm going to see your mother on Thursday
you are,
and
yes.
celebrate you being 70 on Saturday. And then we talk again next week.
Yes, yes, let's do that. So yes, I will. We can talk about my party and how that went.
Yes.
I'm
And then
not.
we talk about our mothers and how we met and
Yes, yes.
lots more.
No, that will be lovely. So we have a year to unpack our thoughts about being 70, and perhaps we'll talk to other women who are in their
Yep,
70th or 71st year as well.
we will.
So that
I
will
look forward to it.
I look forward to it too. It's lovely to be doing this. It's and it's kind of a boost to be doing something like this that's very different to what I usually do as a step into being 70.
Yes. Let's be 70.
Let's be 70. Let's enjoy being 70.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, Lisette, lovely to talk to you, and we'll talk again next week.
We'll talk again next week and see you before that.
Yes.
Great.
Bye, everyone.